Important local coverage. You're watching WISN 12 News this morning.
The Trump administration has ordered federal troops to Milwaukee. We have the overnight reaction from protesters coming up, and a fight between a mother and son turns deadly. How a friend is remembering the Cudahy woman killed right next door. And coronavirus cases continue to spike nationwide. What top health experts say could be to blame. And here's Sally.
It's an impact day for a heat advisory that kicks in at noon. All the details just ahead.
Good Sunday morning to you. It is Sunday, July 26th. We're all spread out in the studio following those CDC guidelines to help slow the spread of COVID-19. We're going to have much more coronavirus coverage coming up in a bit. But first, protesting. It has been 2 months since George Floyd died at the hands of Minneapolis police. And since then, thousands of protests have taken place nationwide, including right here in Milwaukee. At around 8 o'clock last night, demonstrators gathered at Cathedral Square Park and made their way through downtown Milwaukee. It's a response to the Trump administration ordering federal law enforcement officers to the city as part of Operation Legend. Protesters say federal officers are not welcome in Milwaukee. Federal agents have already been deployed to detain protesters in Portland, Oregon.
We face east and kneel to your symbol color gold, the place of dawning. There is beauty in the morning.
To Menominee Falls now, where a kneel for 9 minutes is part of a nationwide movement. The 9 minutes represents the amount of time ex-Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin held his knee on George Floyd's neck before his death. The demonstration held at Redeemer United Church of Christ was against police brutality.
Redeemer wants to participate in this because we are more than a church. We are a strong community of people who want to be bold and be the church outside of these four walls.
The nationwide Kneel for 9 movement meets once a month. Also on Saturday, a Together We Stand event in Milwaukee's Washington Park. Organizers say it allowed for people to come together while still maintaining that social distance needed during this time. Now, they say in a time where the country and city are divided, it provides an opportunity for people to have real conversations about change.
I think that, we all should have the right to be able to express ourselves, especially in a peaceful manner. Obviously, things do get intense and sometimes they kind of do turn negative, but at the end of the day I still feel like it's everyone's right to be able to express themselves, and I definitely don't think that they should be stepping in and stop that.
And the event ran until at least 7 last night. I'll turn to weather now. If 2020 hasn't been enough yet, it's now hurricane season. Hurricane Hannah continues to batter Texas. It came ashore on Texas's Gulf Coast twice yesterday before bringing strong wind and rain with it. Officials are trying to keep people safe from the storm without making the pandemic any worse. Thousands of people are now without electricity in the area of Corpus Christi. But that is not something that we have to worry about here in Wisconsin. But what is on the agenda, a lot of heat.
That's right. Heat advisory was issued by the National Weather Service a couple of hours ago, and it does cover all of southern Wisconsin. Begins today at noon and goes until about 7 o'clock. But there are a couple of caveats that we're going to be watching. First of all, with the heat advisory, drink plenty of water. If you can avoid being outdoors, especially if you have health issues, stay inside if you can, and if you can, stay inside with air conditioning. Drink plenty of water and check on neighbors, and be sure to look after your pets as well. Heat indices could reach to between 100 and 105 degrees this afternoon. Now let me show you. We do have a couple of little sprinkles just to the north of Madison, more in the way of showers and thunderstorms off to the north. This is all associated with a cool front. Now out ahead of the cool front, we'll get some cloudiness in, and if the clouds roll in a little sooner this morning rather than the afternoon, we won't get quite so hot. So this morning, heat's on, no doubt about it. I think we're dry through the morning. Couldn't rule out an isolated sprinkle in our north counties closer to the noon hour. We'll begin to really watch the radar this afternoon, reaching to around 93 degrees. And Chernay showers will continue off and on for tonight. We'll look at overnight lows in the low 70s. But it's already close to 80 across our area. So when you start this warm, 90 is not out of the question.
Yeah, just at 5 in the morning. My mom always told me, treat your body like a camel. Just drink a lot of water before you head out the door, and have that water handy too. Thank you, Sal. Well, let's get to the latest numbers in the coronavirus pandemic now. Another high count. Wisconsin health officials reported 953 new cases Saturday, along with 13 more deaths. Now let's get to this map now showing cases across southeastern Wisconsin. Milwaukee County still has the highest case counts in the area, accounting for more than 17,000 total cases and more than 400 deaths. Across the country, COVID-19 cases continue to soar, prompting health experts nationwide to urge for stricter restrictions. As ABC's Megan Tavrizian shows us, 16 states are breaking records for hospitalization and 9 states reporting record deaths.
As the U.S. hits 5 straight days of over 1,000 COVID-19 deaths, more than 150 medical experts across the country endorsing an open letter to lawmakers, calling for the drastic measure to shut down again and start over.
If our objective is to kill this virus, a shelter in place, as difficult as it will be, is the medicine we need to take.
This comes as Florida surpasses New York in the number of COVID-19 infections, now second only to California, with the most cases in the U.S. All 3 states reaching more than 400,000 total cases. In Florida, nearly 50 ICUs have no available beds. 8-year-old Zane Wampler hospitalized over a week with multi-system inflammatory syndrome caused by COVID.
The secondary syndromes that stem from this are horrifying and terrifying as a parent. My husband and I have sat there and I have not left the room for 8 days.
After seeing a jump in infections, New Orleans shutting down bars and banning takeout alcohol. A surge of cases in Ohio, prompting a visit from coronavirus task force expert Dr. Deborah Birx. She points to evidence that bars and nightclubs could be the source of the increase in recent cases.
It is something about drinking, not wearing a mask, and being close to people, particularly indoors, that is actively spreading this virus.
The debate over whether to start classes in the fall rages on as the CDC lays out new guidelines to get students back in the classroom. Alabama rolling out a new plan to test every college student 2 weeks before starting classes. And in Massachusetts today, Vice President Mike Pence with this message.
Governor, like you, we simply believe that it's best for our kids to be back in the classroom. It's best for working families, and it's the best for our country.
Massachusetts, one of 9 states seeing a drop in COVID hospitalizations, next month will start mandating anyone coming in from states that are hotspots to quarantine for 2 weeks. Megan Tavrizian, ABC News, San Diego.
It is 5:07 and shifting gears now today. A vigil and celebration of life for a 60-year-old man killed in the River West neighborhood. Police say the shooting happened Thursday afternoon near Bremen and Wright. The circumstances leading up to it are still under investigation. He was reportedly known in the neighborhood widely for his signs about politics and religion.
He used to own the Expressions Journal and the Rastaman Times. That were pretty popular art magazines.
I met him 2 days ago. He was riding his bike with a sign about blacks for Trump.
All my interactions with this guy have been wonderful. He's always been kind and polite and caring.
The Milwaukee Community Task Force will hold a vigil for that victim today, and that's happening at noon. Well, now to a deadly shooting in Cudahy. We first brought you this story as breaking news yesterday morning. Police say a son shot and killed his mother in their home, and I went back to that house and saw a neighborhood in mourning.
Always smiling, loved to garden, loved her grandchildren, just loved people.
When Denise Rather looks next door at these flowers, she reminisces over her long friendship with a woman she calls Riza that has now come to a tragic end.
It's just horrible because the family was all there.
Friday night near Lunham and Kirkwood, police rushed to the scene to try to save a woman's life. Well, neighbors tell me they heard arguing and commotion coming from inside this house. They didn't have a good feeling. Next, there were gunshots.
Was a nice family, didn't expect anything like this to happen in this neighborhood.
The 65-year-old woman, who neighbors describe as family-oriented, was killed. And Cudahy police believe the woman's son pulled the trigger.
The last picture I took of her was the day that she was planting with her granddaughters.
Rather says her neighbor had a love that transcended language, the pair bonding even though the woman spoke Armenian.
She would go around to all the neighbors when there was a parade or anything and just hug everybody.
Now, neighbors have many questions.
You wonder what goes into somebody's mind to do something like that.
But one certainty for Rather remains: this is a neighborhood loss.
We were very close.
Well, police arrested a 45-year-old man who lives at that house. Again, police say that person is the victim's son. Neither his identity or the victim's identity has been released. The time now 5:10, and this morning we are working to learn why an SUV hit a Milwaukee County bus. It happened at TEUTONIA and Good Hope around 4:30 yesterday afternoon. The county transit system says an SUV rear-ended a parked bus. The bus driver, the only person on board, was taken to the hospital. That driver is expected to be okay. And here's what the transit union president said about the incident.
Not the first time. Good thing that she was parked, because if she wasn't parked, then it become a question if it's her fault. But they can't blame this on her because she was parked, for what I was told.
No word yet if the SUV driver suffered any injuries. 5:11 and turning to sports now, and Game 2, a win for the Brewers. Thanks to a little TV magic, fans filled the stadium. They used CGI and pre-recorded cheers to get some fans back in the game. The first home run of 2020 came from newcomer Justin Smoke. And then the MVP moment, Christian Yelich with another homer, his first in 320 days since breaking his kneecap. Brewers took Game 2, 8-3. On to basketball now, the Bucks will be back at it. They'll be back at full strength for their first game of the restart on Friday. Pat Connaughton arrived in Orlando last night after recovering from COVID-19, but he will have to quarantine for 2 days before joining his teammates on the court. Eric Bledsoe, who also tested positive for coronavirus, did not play in last night's scrimmage against the Kings. They're slowly working him back to full strength. The Bucks won 131-123. Stephen Watson has much more coming up later in sports. 12 News Time is 5:12, and more mask mandates are taking effect tomorrow. How much it's going to cost you if you refuse to cover your face. And not all face masks are created equally. 12 News asks which ones work the best. Plus, our area will soon be under a heat advisory, Sal.
We are already near 80, and the heat advisory kicks in at noon. I'll show you when we have a few showers that'll break the heat.
Get instant updates on the coronavirus by downloading the 12 News app now.